This episode of the Slash Filmcast is brought to you by Casper. Go to casper.com/filmcast and use the promo code FILMCAST to save yourself $50 off your purchase. That's casper.com/filmcast and the promo code FILMCAST.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. I'm David Chen, and with me are
Devendra Hardwar
and Jeff Kanata.
Welcome to the show, everyone. What we're going to do here on this podcast today is we're going to talk about what we've been watching. We got a couple of brief film news items up top, and then we're also going to do a Slash Film Court segment where we adjudicate your movie-related dilemmas before we move into our featured review this week, and that's of Catherine Bigelow's new film, Detroit. So that's what we got in store for you today. Find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. So a couple film news items just wanted to mention up top. Guys, I feel like the film news on this show has really been suffering this summer because we've just had so many movies to review. It's just
a lot to do.
It's been an insane number of movies. I mean, I did a Dark Tower bonus episode and an Okja bonus episode with Matt Singer and Devendra Hardwar, respectively. You'd find that on the Slash Filmcast feed. But yeah, it's just, I think I said this earlier on. Like, this is probably the best July we've had since I've started doing the podcast, right? I mean, just an insane number of great films during that month.
Yeah, those two notwithstanding, right?
That's correct. I mean, it was a great July. It was a terrible June, other than Baby Driver, But it was a great July. But there's just been a lot of film news that's happened that we just haven't had a chance to talk about. And on the one hand, that sucks. On the other hand, it's great because there's actually a new podcast out that can help you with that need. It's called Slash Film Daily. And it's run by other fine folks at slashfilm.com. And I recommend you check it out wherever your podcasts are available. They do a daily show where they talk about film news. It's pretty cool. You can find it at daily.slashfilm.com. But, yeah, a few things we wanted to mention. Number one is that a few really important people in the world of pop culture have passed away. Sam Shepard passed away recently.
Yeah.
Very talented actor as well as playwright. Jeff, you're an actor, obviously. Like, what was your primary way of getting to know Sam Shepard? Did you admire more of his acting work or his writing?
Well, of course, I admired his writing first because I, as a theater kid and as a BFA, theater major in college, of course, Sam Shepard is basically part of the canon you're taught. I mean, he is one of the great American playwrights, and his body of work from the late 70s and early 80s is like a chapter in any actor's learning process. I mean, Buried Child and Curse of the Starving Class and Fool for Love. And there are so many amazing, incredible roles that he's written. So yeah, I was first exposed to him through his writing, his brutal, very American writing. It's very the language in it is so raw and the emotions are so raw. He's his own genre in a lot of ways. And then later is when I sort of learned more about his acting. And of course, he's a phenomenal actor as well. And all the way up through Bloodline. He was the patriarch on Bloodline, but many film roles, and he's a huge talent, a huge force in American drama, and he will be missed for sure.
He was just so reliable. I think when you see Sam Shepard in something, even what was it, Swordfish? He's in Swordfish. He's a good old reliable actor. Like, I just love seeing him in things. But in particular, The Right Stuff, him as Chuck Yeager, that's an incredible role.
Oh yeah, great part. Did I say True West? If I didn't say True West, that's maybe his most known play. If you haven't read any Sam Shepard, chances are there's a Sam Shepard play that's on near you at some point in the next couple of years. He is in the American repertoire, and there's going to be a theater that does one of his plays soon if they aren't doing one right now, because he's part of that pantheon.
Indeed. Well, he will be missed. But yeah, this is another year where life has taken away a lot more heroes. 2017, the celebrity passings on have not stopped, and also Donald Trump is president. So it's turning out to be great, guys.
Yeah.
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 Let me do that again. Let me do that transition again. I always have difficulty transitioning out of these things, guys.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Anyway, Sam Shepard will be missed, and leaves a huge body of work that will be appreciated for a very long time to come. Other piece of film news I wanted to recommend is that one other piece of film news that I wanted to mention is actually a bit of television news. Jason Bateman sent out a tweet about a week ago. It's a behind-the-scenes photo of the Bluth home from Arrested Development, not the model home, but the mother and father Bluth home. He wrote in the tweet, "Here comes trouble. The Bluths move back in on the 8th." And he was referring to the start of principal photography on Arrested Development Season 5, which is slated to come back in 2018. So,
Man.
Yeah, this is an instance of a show, dying, coming back, and then, I don't know that it ever died again, but I certainly thought we would never see another Arrested Development season, and then coming back again. Right?
Well, I think it's one of those ones where we all were like, it's one of those be careful what you wish for things, because season 4 was not great and everybody was disappointed. And I'm like, fool me once, the second time I'm going to be more excited. That's how I feel right now, because I'm very optimistic that this is not going to fall into the same trap as season 4. I was very disappointed with season 4. Arrested Development is in my favorite shows of all time. A very, very short list of all-time shows. And, whatever it was, whether it was the fact that all the actors were very busy and they couldn't get them all in the same place at the same time, and so they kind of wrote to that, and this very ambitious structure that they attempted, whatever it was, it just didn't capture the magic.
It's probably all those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Combination of all those things. You're probably right. And supposedly this time everybody is in the same place at the same time, and it's going to be much more similar to how it was in the original 3 seasons. So
like a
I'm
real
very
TV
optimistic.
show.
Yeah, I'm optimistic it's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, this will be an instance of a show not only coming back a second time, but like the second time being better, like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
I hope so.
I'm really excited. Yeah. So
there are flashes of brilliance in season 4.
There's good stuff in season 4. It's just I think overall we're so disappointed because 2 and 3 are like perfect.
Yeah,
right.
They are
That's
high watermarks that basically changed television forever. So yeah, it's hard to live up to that. But season 4, yeah, the episode where Jason Bateman's character goes to college to hang out with his son
is out of the.
It is
very funny.
that episode is beautiful.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
Arrested Development, I'm in a relationship right now, as you guys know, and Arrested Development is a touchstone of that relationship. Like every once or twice I see my significant other, Arrested Development is quoted. So we are enormous fans of the show, and but we, as I might have mentioned in the past, we always quote from seasons 1 and 2 and 3. We never quote from season 4, right? And
but how many
it's a
times
really
have you
good
seen
gauge.
season 4?
It's a really good gauge of how memorable it is, right?
I would say once a day, either my wife or myself will say, "It's tired in here." That's kind of our way of saying I want to go to sleep.
What is that a reference to?
That's when oh man, my brain's not working. The brother with the hook for the hand.
Oh, yeah, Buster.
Buster. When Buster's in the trunk of the car and they open it up and he's all passed out and he's like, it's tired in here.
Oh yeah, that's great.
So funny.
She's gonna listen to my significant other's gonna listen to this episode and then she'll know instantly and shame me for not knowing that reference, Jeff. So anyway, let's move on with the rest of the show, gentlemen. Let's talk about what we've been watching. I wanted to mention a few things. First of all, I had a chance to see Dunkirk again, round 2, in IMAX Laser. and I did enjoy it more the second time around. You know, I think since we recorded an episode, we talked about how challenging it was to understand what was actually going on the first time. And second time, did not have that problem whatsoever. Because we'd already talked about it on the show, and I'd done a bunch of reading about it. I did want to mention one thing that a lot of people emailed into us at /filmcast@gmail.com. We had expressed confusion about like why some scenes were shot using IMAX cameras and other scenes were shot using regular cameras. And the answer is that the IMAX cameras are so loud that you basically cannot use any of the dialogue from any scenes you shoot with IMAX cameras. Right?
Wave of the future.
Well, especially if you're close, right? Like if the shot is very close to the people and you want to use their dialogue, you can't because the IMAX cameras are too loud. So anytime and Chris Nolan has said he doesn't like re-recording all the dialogue in post, which is what he has to do. He thinks it like you don't get the same level of performance. So the shots that were done using regular aspect ratio were basically the shots where they used the audio that they captured that day.
It kind of explains a lot about just the structure of the film overall and how little dialogue there is in it. Like if he sort of bought into the idea of making this as pure an IMAX film as he could, I think that may have actually informed the decision to make it as sparsely spoken as it is.
Yeah, I do wonder if that was part of the decision. There's also a note this week that like Christopher Nolan wanted to shoot it without having a script.
Yeah,
wanted to be mostly improvised, and I think
that sounds like a disaster.
Well, yeah, especially if you can't use audio that you captured on the day of, it'd be extremely challenging. I think.
I think when you hear mostly improvised, you assume it's going to be like this crazy thing where they just riff and they go. And I think a movie like this, it's not that it was going to be improvised like let's write the dialogue as we go. It's more like this movie didn't need a script per se. It is about small moments of feeling, and there's so little dialogue in it anyway that you could go in.
It's a flow chart, not a script.
Exactly. It's an outline. It's what are we shooting on this day. And that's enough. Improvise in the sense of you're in a situation, feel that, and go. There's not going to be a lot of talking anyway. So, but it's interesting because the scene inside that submarine with all of the dudes like hiding in the submarine,
right?
Or not
so
submarine.
We'll say that this is some plot details for Dunkirk coming up, but
I guess,
we won't spoil anything. But
I was just going to say there's a scene with some soldiers inside a boat.
Yeah, in a boat.
All cramped, kind of hiding.
Yep.
And that, as far as I remember, is all shot with IMAX. And there's a lot of talking in that scene.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I actually don't think that was mostly IMAX, Jeff, now that I think of it.
It's hard to tell because that was mostly like dark scene.
Yeah,
Are you sure?
Like
interesting.
I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but to my recollection, it was not mostly IMAX in there. That was actually it was the ones that were definitely non-IMAX were there's a bunch of stuff on the boat with Mark Rylance.
Right.
That was
that I definitely remember.
And on the train, at some point. Yeah.
There's a bunch of other great emails we got, but they're all very spoilery. If we have time after the show, I'd love to go over some of it with you guys. I do want to just say one thing real quick that's hopefully not spoilery. I don't think it's spoilery, but, skip ahead 20 seconds if you are afraid. But I did complain about the last shot of the film as being very strangely edited. And, hearing the voiceover context again for that shot, seeing some of the emails that were written in about this, I actually think, the last shot really works for me now. Like, I've come around to that final shot. So I have more to say about that when we can talk about it in spoilers or maybe after the show. But, watching it again, definitely a great experience. But it was one of those things where I felt like I had to watch it. It wasn't a thing where I went and really enjoyed myself, quote unquote. It was one of those things where I felt like if I didn't go again, I would regret not having gone. Do you know?
It's your duty.
Yeah, because you just so rarely get to experience something in a movie theater like that, just ever in your life.
Yeah.
And I knew, if I didn't go to IMAX a second time, I would look back and say, oh, man, I can't believe I didn't go to IMAX a second time, right? And even though I didn't, it's not a movie you have fun with, right? As you said, Jeff, it's a movie you survive, right? So it's not a movie you watch, it's a movie you survive. It's There's a lot of unpleasantness, a lot of tension to it, but yeah, man, there's just nothing else like it this year in terms of pure spectacle and tension. Well, maybe Detroit for the tension.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're about to talk about one today that might rival it.
Exactly. Wanted to mention a couple other things that I saw. Well, I saw The Dark Tower. I already mentioned that. Did a spoiler review with Matt Singer, and you can find that on the /Filmcast feed. The Dark Tower was not a good movie. I think overall...
I'm not going to see it, Dave. I'm not going. I'm a fan of the books, and I am, much like I was with, and you may laugh at this reference, but much like I was with The Time Traveler's Wife, I'm just going to pretend like that movie was never made.
The two canonical movies that
I know.
Jeff Kanata is going to avoid are The Dark Tower and The Time Traveler's Wife.
I loved The Time Traveler's Wife book, and I will stand up for that to any man or woman who dares try to diss it. It's a great book, and it made me cry.
All right, fair enough. So here's what I'll say. I remember, Jeff, when we talked about the Netflix original series Fuller House on the podcast, and that movie broke your brain. You like? I remember. I distinctly remember.
The TV show broke.
I'm sorry, the TV show, I should say. It broke your brain. I remember you being on the podcast, and you said you could not find words to describe it.
That's right.
You were saying, you said, it's nothing. It's not anything.
It isn't anything.
You just kept repeating that over and over again, as though something was broken inside you.
That's right.
And, and you know, The Dark Tower is not quite that bad, but leaving the theater, I had no words to describe it. It's nothing. It evokes no emotion whatsoever. I mean, the way the movie moves, it goes so quickly. It's 88 minutes long. I mean, imagine, right? You know, Peter Jackson made those 3 Lord of the Rings books into 3 movies. Then he made The Hobbit, which is 1 book, into 3 movies, right? So it's like 4 books into 6 movies, right?
This is like the opposite of that?
Yeah, imagine making, like, 7 books into 1 movie. That's 88 minutes. Like, imagine
barely a movie. A movie isn't a movie like 90 minutes is kind of the minimum movie. This is below the minimum of movie.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, Jeff, you and I know that I roundly reject your 90-minute movie minimum.
Yes.
You know, I don't think we should be the,
I thought you were more of a maximum guy.
Guy. Yeah, that's right. I don't think O.J. Made in America should be excluded from the Oscars. But yes, 8 novels, 4,250 pages, 88 minutes. I mean, to be fair, I believe, from my understanding, the movie is kind of a sequel to the story.
Yeah, it's not a straight adaptation.
Right, so it's not a straight adaptation, but still, you know, I mean, if they had made all those books, like Lord of the Rings books and Hobbit, into 1 movie, you would say that's a travesty, and that movie probably wouldn't make very much of an impression. That's what happens in this movie.
My thing is, the movie just looks so cheap. Like, that's the thing. Like, it really looks like Matthew McConaughey and Idris Elba just walking around New York, flinging magic things.
Well, they are. Most of the New York filming takes place in like 1 block of New York, and
I mean, it is literally cheap. Like, the budget is not
$65 million, right?
That's insane.
That's like
a romantic comedy budget these days.
A half to a third of like a normal, like a Marvel film, right? It's like half the budget, if not a third of the budget of a Marvel film. And it's, you know, I think there are interesting elements to it. Probably the biggest mistake they make is having the kid be the main character, right? I believe in the books, the gunslinger is actually the main character, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But in the movie,
and the kid is pretty much the most boring character in the books.
Yeah, well, that's also kind of true of the film too. The 11-year-old named Jake Chambers, he's kind of the Neo of this movie, right? He's the audience surrogate that you find out about the world through, but he simply does not have the chops to go up against Idris Elba. Like, they just aren't. You know, Idris Elba is a great actor. I don't think the kid who played Jake Chambers is that bad. A lot of people have thought he's quite bad, Tom Taylor. But that's probably one of the biggest mistakes of many mistakes. So I don't really think this is worth watching. Maybe if it comes on TV, it might be a curiosity for you to check out one day. And I've heard that the TV series is still full steam ahead.
So is the TV series linked to this film, or is it its own thing?
I think it's.
I thought that was going to be
I think that is going to be a
adaptation.
straight adaptation. So I think it's.
It's all very.
But is it Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey?
I doubt it.
Okay.
But Glenn Mazzara,
So it's
who did
two.
Walking Dead season 2, he's show running Dark Tower right now. Yep.
So these are two parallel versions.
Nothing can go wrong with this plan.
I think I was reading Eric Vespe's review over at Ain't It Cool, and it was heartbreaking because for many people, not myself, I wasn't a huge, I've never read the Dark Tower books, but for many people, this is like the only shot they're going to get, maybe in their lifetime, to see this book come to life on the big screen, right?
Right.
And they're not going to attempt it again for what? A decades maybe, right? It's kind of like a Last Airbender situation when M. Night ruined that movie. Like,
oh yeah,
we're not going to see another Last Airbender for a while, and I don't think we're going to see a Dark Tower on the big screen for a while. But hopefully the TV series will redeem it. So,
I actually think it could work better as a TV series. I mean, in the vein
no question, no question.
Yeah.
Only other thing I wanted to mention, I had a chance to see Bo Burnham's new comedy special, Make Happy, on Netflix. Have you guys heard of Bo Burnham? He was an actor in The Big Sick, right?
Yeah. Funny guy. Funny comedian.
Very funny. Lachlan wrote into /filmcast@gmail.com. This is the first time I've ever sent any communication to any entertainment host of any kind, podcast, television, radio, or otherwise. But I felt compelled to make sure you knew about a particular stand-up special released on Netflix this year, or last year, I should say. Based on your recent recommendation for Hassan Minhaj, I checked it out and was really impressed. For me, I love when you can tell that a comedian is treating comedy like a true art worth perfecting, a valuable craft, and that's exactly my perception of Hassan's act. So I wanted to ensure you see or have already seen Bo Burnham's Make Happy on Netflix. It is quite simply a stand-up comedy masterpiece. I have never had an emotional response like I did with that special. I have probably watched it 20 times now, and the ending still affects me every time. Based on your love of stand-up and your reaction to Hassan, I think you'd really enjoy Bo Burnham's Make Happy. Side note, I hate all his other stuff. He was young, immature, and I truly loathe his previous specials. But Make Happy is a game changer for stand-up. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. End quote. So that comes in from Lachlan.
Well, Lachlan, now that you've broken the seal, you're just going to be sending emails to hosts of things all over the place.
Yeah, that was the first of 18 emails Lachlan wrote in this week. No, I'm just joking. But Make Happy, guys, it really affected me, I have to say. It is, you know how you were talking about Oh Hello being a deconstruction of Hollywood's Broadway special, I should say, right?
Yeah.
Make Happy is a deconstruction of a comedy stand-up special.
I gotta see this.
And he'll do things like he'll get the audience all riled up in a lather, like he'll get them chanting and doing things, and then turn it against the audience, so like make the audience feel stupid. And also make them laugh, and he does this repeatedly throughout the course of the show. He's almost like making fun of the idea of a comedy special altogether throughout many instances in the show. And as someone who loves comedy specials, I really enjoyed that. I think if you haven't seen that many comedy specials in your life, this is not a good one to start on, or if you have stayed away from them for a while, this is not a good one to get reintroduced to them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But if you are very familiar with with specials in general, then Bo Burnham's Make Happy is something that I think you will enjoy. So,
oh man, I got to see that. I'm such a huge fan of stand-up. I'm very excited to see this.
Yeah, I think it's and he does a lot of singing as well, and I think the singing is actually very good. Like the last two songs of the special, I couldn't get them out. I re-listened to them dozens of times after I saw the special. Like that's usually, when someone sings during a special, or like, Zach Galifianakis does his music thing during a comedy special, you don't necessarily go back and like listen to those songs for the melody, but like the stuff that he performs here, I actually enjoyed listening to it as a song. And it's very good in my opinion, very clever and worth your time if you are into stand-up. So that's Bo Burnham's Make Happy. Jeff, would love to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, I'll definitely put this at the top of my list.
Jeff, you've been watching. Just make sure you don't watch it with your wife, okay, Jeff? Because our history of me recommending things for you two is bad. But
It's true.
Jeff, what have you been watching on Netflix this week?
I caught a Netflix original film called The Incredible Jessica James. This stars Jessica Williams, who people probably know as the former Daily Show correspondent, Jessica Williams. And I was always a huge fan of her on The Daily Show. I think she's charming and funny and quick and really an effective correspondent. But this is a narrative film. This is a romantic comedy, and she shoulders the lead role. The movie rises and falls on her performance, and she's delightful. She is, I think, going to be a breakout star. This movie is short and sweet and just a lovely, simple little movie.
Yeah.
It's not going to change the world. It's not the best movie I've ever seen, but it's delightful. It's a really pleasant way to spend an evening, especially with a loved one. I thought it was very funny. I thought it was very charming. And even better, her talent shines through in this movie. She plays a character who, on the page, written, I can only imagine comes off very unlikable. She is a character that really thinks highly of herself. There's a scene where a character tells her, like, they're kind of having an argument, and the guy's like, "I really like you," and she goes, "I know, everybody likes me. I'm super dope." She's like that, and constantly throughout the thing, she speaks very highly of herself, and with an actress who is not as charming and fun and likable as she, that might be something where you're like, well, this chick is a total B, like, well, get over yourself or whatever. But she's just so lovable and wonderful to watch. I mean, from the very first moment of this movie where, she says some very unlikable things and then breaks into dance. It's a very charming film. It's not, it's not, like I said, it's not the best movie of the year, but it's very watchable and very fun and very sweet, and I really liked it.
That's The Incredible Jessica James. Devindra, you saw this too, right?
I did, and I really enjoyed it as well. It is very sweet. It's a movie, it's a romantic comedy, but it's also a movie about chasing your dreams and that struggle and, being beaten down with rejection. This is a movie, rejection is like a big part of this film. And what I think is really interesting about it is that, this character just like keeps getting back up. She has this idea about herself, like, yeah, she's freaking dope. And, it's the sort of thing, like, sometimes you have to think of yourself as like, oh, you're actually good at what you do, and recognize that about yourself to, survive the shitstorm that is daily life these days. So yeah, I loved all that about the film. Found it really inspiring. Also really like Chris O'Dowd as the romantic interest in this.
Yeah, he's great.
Just love seeing that guy all over the place. I love that he had, he was a big hit in Bridesmaids. He was also in Girls for a bit, but I know him as Roy from the IT Crowd. And it is just so weird to see that guy as like a viable romantic interest in movies now, because he was just like a slovenly Irish IT dude, in that show. And it's a great show. I love it. I just think, like, he represents hope for all the nerds, I guess, in a way.
He's slovenly in the way that, like, Tina Fey is slovenly. Do you know? I mean,
she's not at all.
Have you seen the IT Crowd?
But that's what I'm saying is, like, there's these people that, like, the show is trying to convince you that this person's ugly, but
I mean, have you seen the IT Crowd?
I have. I don't think it's one of those situations.
He's not a handsome. He's a good looking dude. But, in the IT Crowd, like, he is wearing, like, his dirty T-shirts. Like, he's slovenly in the way that a geeky guy can be slovenly, right? And I think everybody, you clean them up a little, everybody can look a little dapper, I
think we just learned you and I have very different preferences, Devindra, when it comes to men.
Clearly.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, that's The Incredible Jessica James. It's available on Netflix right now. Devindra, what else have you been watching this week? I
saw the first episode of The Sinner, which is a new show on USA of all networks. And it's sort of like a murder mystery. It's sort of like The Night Of, except a little different. It stars Jessica Biel as a seemingly normal housewife and mother who one day decides to stab a guy to death on a beach. And that's how the show opens. And that's real. Like, that happened. Everybody sees it. She says she did it. All that is clear. The mystery is like, what? Why?
What?
Why did you do this?
It's a what done it.
It's a what done it, yeah. And that's really that's really it. Like, we're trying to figure out, oh, what is going on with this lady? Because we get hints that she's not like fully satisfied with her life, and like she feels maybe a little trapped in her marriage. I think this show, it's just, I like this sort of thing. I like murder mysteries, and the murder is not the mystery here. It's more like, yeah, why did it happen? So I am on board with that. I think it's stylish, decently well written. Bill Pullman is here too as the requisite detective with issues. And instead of having issues with his feet, like the lawyer did in The Night Of, he has issues with his hands because he likes to pay ladies to step on his hands. So that's a thing. Okay. I like Bill Pullman in this too. Like, the show, like, it is not the sort of thing you'd expect to see from USA. It is pretty gruesome, but I think along with Mr. Robot, it shows like this is network trying to do very different things. It's only eight episodes long, I believe, and for now, I'm along for the ride. It's interesting enough, and I think Jessica Biel is very good in it as well.
So that's The Sinner. It's on USA, right?
Yep.
All right, that's what we've been watching this week. But guys, let's move on to our next segment. And before we get to that, I want to mention this email that we got in from Chris from Maryland, who writes into /filmcast@gmail.com. Hello. 1 year ago, I wrote in the story of how I found digital movie codes in DVDs I checked out at the library. A movie-related, morally questionable activity I shared with you guys. It was fun to hear some of my favorite hosts discuss my silly story, but soon after, the /Filmcast had a new segment, /Film Court. Now every time you guys do the segment, I feel proud knowing I was the muse that inspired this segment, and I look forward to another year of movie-related petty crimes. End quote.
Aww.
So yeah, 1 year of the /Film Court. Also, Chris says, after you guys read my email, I never came across another digital code in the movies I checked out ever again. There must have been a librarian /Filmcast fan in my area.
So I'll put a stop to that.
Yeah. But yeah, 1 year of the /Film Court intermittently happening on the podcast, guys. And boy, what adventures we've had. But let's go on another one today as we get to this week's episode of the /Film Court. The /Film Court is the quasi-weekly segment where we adjudicate your movie-related dilemmas. You can always write into us at /filmcast@gmail.com with your dilemmas. And this one comes in from Philidia Featherbottom, who writes in, I previously asked the court to rule on the case of my friend who buys the $1 upcharge soda size and then does not finish it. I was grateful for the court's swiftness in declaring him a monster, and I hope that the court will again, in its abiding wisdom, find in my favor. However, I must ask for the recusal of one of the judges because this is a case against him. I speak of the Honorable David Chen.
Honorable?
This is like one of those episodes of Law and Order where it's like, the cop is on trial. Oh, man.
You have to recuse yourself, Chen.
It is summer, and the city where I live shows outdoor movies in a nearby park. You grab some lawn chairs, spread a blanket, and enjoy a picnic as the sun sets. Perhaps your kids come, and at dusk you all watch Raiders of the Lost Ark or Rogue One or The Princess Bride. At least, this is what I imagine. I have never been. David Chen, who is my fiancé, twist, loves movies.
Twist!
However...
by the way, I'm shocked that you are engaged to Miss Featherbottom.
I know, it is quite a surprise. However, he likes to...
Take her name.
What'd you say?
I think you should take her name.
Yeah, I'll think about that. However, he likes to watch movies in a very controlled way and is distracted when they are not shown on a good screen with good sound and minimal interruption. This has led to an immediate veto whenever I suggest movies in the park. He hypothesizes that the projection will not be clear enough and the sound inaudible, or worse still, punctuated by the screams of children. I agree that most movies
are not... Screams. You said screams, but her word is squeals.
Squeals, yeah. Sorry, sometimes
which is a much more positive word.
I agree that most movies are not a good fit for this type of screening, but I posit that the movies at these events are generally familiar, crowd-pleasing classics that are almost like friendly background noise. One does not go to lose oneself in the cathedral-like hush of a darkened cinema. One goes to laugh with a crowd when Indy says he's afraid of snakes, or cheer together when Donnie Yen fights off stormtroopers, or recite as one when Mandy Patinkin says, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." I know that this court has a well-established body of judgments against interruptions and distractions during movies. However, the judges have also advised that some movie-going experiences are exceptions and are actually enhanced by a participatory crowd, such as in the case of Get Out. I asked the court to tell my fiancé that he should join me at an outdoor movie this summer in the spirit of experimentation to at least try out a different way to enjoy the medium we both love. Well, guys, I'm going to leave it to you. What say you guys about this case?
You have no standing here because, yeah, of course, going to see a movie outside isn't going to be great, but that's not the point. You're outside and you're watching a movie. It's like impossible. That shouldn't be happening. So you're really just there to enjoy that.
I do need to say, Dylan Schwan in the chat room says the email isn't even done yet, and I'm on David's side. When I pay for the experience outside my home and the viewing conditions aren't close to a minimum of very good, I'm out. Well, I agree, Dylan. That being said, most of these movies are free, I'm pretty sure.
Free! What are you? Yeah, and also think about the experience, right? You got to think about the value of the experience. You're not going there to see a movie. You're going there to sit outside and see a movie. Like that. That's kind of all of it.
I have two things to say. First of all, you're not. It would be a completely different situation if you are going to see a film for the first time in an outdoor theater going experience like this. If you have never seen Raiders of the Lost Ark before, and your significant other says, "Oh my God, it's one of my favorite movies. You should come with me." By all means, say no. I want to see it in a better way for my first time. I'm all in favor of that. That's clearly not what's happening here, because Dave has seen all of these movies that she has referenced. So I would support someone saying, I want to value my first viewing in a much more conducive environment. Second thing I want to say is, David, when you have many times, in fact, I think even this week, you have gone to an outdoor venue with a whole lot of other people to listen to music that you have heard before, that you enjoy. I guarantee you the auditory experience of that music is much better on your home stereo or in your noise-canceling earphones, but you go to watch a live concert in an outdoor venue for completely different reasons than pure audio quality. You go for the experience of being there with the crowd, seeing it live, having this kind of communal relationship with art that you love. And that is what the outdoor movie-going experience is about. So
this isn't even a debate.
This is not a debate.
This is more hereby, like a smackdown.
By the power vested in us, Devindra and I hereby sentence you to going to one of these outdoor movies.
All right. Well, I will
our judgment is final, David.
You know, I'm actually not like that opposed to this idea. It's more just something that I haven't really been feeling. You know what I'm saying? It's not as I'm categorically opposed to it. So I think I should have caveated this by, you know, there would have been less dramatic tension that way. But it's not something I'm categorically opposed to. I just haven't felt it this summer, especially because there's been other stuff that we've needed to watch. But okay, I hear you guys. I'll try and
give it a shot. That being said, though, I would love for the outdoor movie experience to be perfect, right? Imagine like we had that technology and I just saw Samsung, like they created like a 30-foot wide cinema screen that's just like a big LED display. Imagine something like that where you don't even have to worry about the projection. You're actually watching a clear image and have good sound on a rooftop or something. That would be amazing. I'd be down for that.
So all you got to do is take an outdoor environment like that, put a roof on it, 4 walls around it, nice good seats and like a stadium seating kind of configuration.
Get some AC in there.
That's helpful.
Yeah, AC. That's really good. And have like aisles and like cup holders.
Gotta have food.
Put it in a building, that serves food. And man, I think this is really an idea that could take off, guys.
Yeah, I mean,
one day.
You take this home, throw it in a pot, add some broth, a potato, baby, you've got a stew going. Anyway. Chris Yee Mon in the chat room says, I live in Dave's town, and I know the outdoor cinema the writer's referring to. I saw Moana for the first time there. It worked out fine. So
it was fine.
It worked out well.
It's interesting. I actually there's a park walking distance from my house where we just moved in January, and they do this. They just had last weekend. They just had Rogue One, and I really wanted to go, but have a baby, so we would get like 15 minutes in the movie and then have to leave. So
that is a perfect thing to bring a baby to, though, by the way, or if like when the child is a little older, like, because bringing kids to an actual theater is a nightmare. So outdoors actually great.
All right, guys. Well, the Slash Film Court has ruled again. Dave is sentenced to go see a movie outdoors. You mentioned actually.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Nope. I was going to say, David, that there are things like outdoor movies where the environment doesn't have to be perfect to get the most enjoyment out of them. But there are other things where you do want the environment to be perfect. And one of those things, I would argue, is sleep. You want your sleep to be the best it can possibly be. It defines your day. It defines your whole life, in fact. And I would argue that you wouldn't want to just throw a cot down outdoors. And in the same way, you wouldn't want to settle for some crappy mattress that you've been using for years and years that's worn out. You probably don't even know how bad your sleep is if you've been using the same mattress for a long, long time. But luckily, our sponsor is there to get your back, literally, because your back is probably going to feel better. It did for me when I switched to a Casper mattress. Casper is a sleep brand that created one perfect mattress and sold it directly to customers. Why? Well, that eliminates commission-driven inflated prices. You no longer have to go into these big warehouse stores and make a decision quickly by laying down on something for a few minutes and trying to decide, that's the mattress I want. I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on this, while the salesperson hovers needily right in front of me, waiting for me to make a decision. Nobody likes that. It's not fun. It doesn't actually lead to getting you the best sleep, which is really the goal here. That's why Casper made a great mattress and then decided to sell it online. And the way you get it is it's delivered right to your house. It unfurls. I actually did this. You slice it open, it unfurls right there in your house. It's super easy. And then you get to sleep on it for 100 nights before you have to decide whether or not you want to keep it or not. It's completely risk-free. If in any time during that 100-night home trial you decide this isn't the mattress for you, they'll come back, they'll pick it up and refund your money. That's how confident they are that this actually will improve your sleep and improve your life. And you don't have to take my word for it. Take the word of my co-hosts. You guys have done this, right?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I sleep on a Casper mattress every night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the shopping experience, the experience of opening it up, it opens like a caterpillar unfolding before you, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing you want to sleep on more than a caterpillar.
Yeah, seriously.
Nice and cozy.
Yeah.
It comes in a tiny box. If you live in a walk-up, it is actually the best way to get a mattress. So
yeah.
That's right. It's actually easier than getting an actual mattress from a store.
So much easier. And when you move, it's light. It's so easy to move around.
Yeah, that's cool. So over 20,000 reviews with an average of 4.8 stars. Casper is quickly becoming the internet's favorite mattress. Free shipping and returns in the U.S. and Canada. It's designed, developed, and assembled here in the U.S. of A. And this is going to be something that's going to improve your sleep. It certainly improved mine. Even better than that, we're going to give you $50 off your mattress. That's pretty great. All you got to do is go to casper.com/filmcast and use the promo code filmcast to save $50 off. Plus, it'll let them know that it's a good idea to sponsor our show, which we appreciate. Casper.com, CASPER.com/filmcast, and the promo code filmcast to get yourself $50 off.
We want to thank Casper for supporting us for this episode of the podcast. We also want to thank all of our donors. Thanks to Noah Roberts from McMinnville, Oregon, Ryan R. from Mesa, Arizona, Joseph Bisquiti, and Wade Breslin, as well as Jacob Flores. Thanks so much for your contributions. Thanks also to subscribers at the rate of $2 per month. Ellen Skirvin, Design Department Partners, LLC, Ryan Crisp, David Cisbaro, Joseph Johnson, and Philip Heaney. You guys are all awesome. If you want to support us, go to slashfilm.com, click on the /filmcast tab, use the PayPal links on the side of the page. All the money you contribute goes to helping us defray the cost of seeing movies, which can be pretty expensive, and also putting on the show. So we really appreciate it, folks. But let's get to our review today of Catherine Bigelow's newest film, Detroit. That was some good segueing, Jeff.
Hey, man.
Well played.
Thank you.
I think people in the chat are like they didn't even know the segue was coming, and then by the time it happened, like they're already in the ad. You know,
They're
That's
shook.
what we like to do. We like to, yeah.
Yeah, they're shook. That's right.
They're shook. We like to disturb people with the ads we do.
That was from the trailer for Detroit, the new film by director Catherine Bigelow, written by Mark Bull. These are the guys behind The Hurt Locker. And I am going to read part of the plot summary on IMDb. Like, I think there's actually a significant possibility that people don't know the outcome of this story. Right?
Yes.
I mean, I did not know the outcome of the story heading into it.
Neither did I.
But yeah, amidst the chaos of the Detroit Rebellion, with the city under curfew, and as the Michigan Guard, let me do this again. Let me just do that whole thing again, guys. Sorry. Give me a second.
Welcome to the Slash Filmcast. Just do the whole thing again.
Welcome to the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. That was from the trailer for Detroit, the new film by writer Mark Bull, director Catherine Bigelow, the team that brought you The Hurt Locker. I'm going to read the plot summary from Wikipedia. A police raid in Detroit in 1967 results in a multi-day riot. This story is centered on the Algiers Motel incident, which occurred on Detroit, Michigan on July 25th, 1967, during the racially charged 12th Street riot. So that's the plot summary of the movie, and before we continue, we should say that, this is a real-life event, it's based off a real-life event, but none of us on the podcast knew the details of the event. We saw the movie as a way of kind of informing ourselves of the event. And so we are not going to have spoilers for the real-life event. At the beginning, we'll have a spoiler section. I mean, the movie is structured like a conventional thriller, so it is actually kind of easy to separate it into spoilers and non-spoilers, but it is based off a real life event, and obviously there were real consequences, real people involved, so I want to just acknowledge that up front. All that being said, Jeff Canada, earlier we talked about how this movie is perhaps one of the only movies that comes out this summer that's more tense than Dunkirk. I tweeted that this movie makes Dunkirk look like a walk in the park. And
a walk on the beach.
Yeah, curious what you thought of that. Do you think this movie is better at generating tension than Dunkirk?
If not better, it's equal. I mean, they are both very tension filled, and it may be better. They do it in different ways.
Right.
I find this movie ramps more slowly into the tension, and once it's there, it is heightened. This movie crescendos in a very, very lengthy scene. It is really one scene with a movie sort of bookending it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that scene is harrowing and emotionally distressing and powerful beyond words. And I would even say this, guys, has stayed with me more than Dunkirk has. I really, I was really affected by Dunkirk, but that does not compare to how I was affected by Detroit. It shook me watching it, and it has stayed with me in the days that have followed. Excuse me. And I mean, it's an incredible piece of filmmaking. It is a 2.5-hour movie. I think it probably could have been shorter. It's a very oddly structured film.
It's very weird, yeah.
There's like 20 minutes at the beginning where there's no characters. You don't meet any of the people that you are going to follow in this movie in the first 20 minutes. It's just setting up the sort of environment in which this drama is going to take place. And I didn't know anything about this movie when I went into it, so I didn't know what I was in for.
Yeah,
I was like,
the first like 30 to 60 minutes is very confusing. You don't know what story this movie is going to tell, right?
It's a documentary, basically.
Yes,
for a while.
Yeah, very much so. It is very much a dramatized documentary, and actually they use quite a bit of real news footage and imagery, and I found all of that very effective. But also, it's a strange way to be brought into this tale because you don't know, it kind of breaks all the rules of filmmaking, which is, you know, you got to meet your main character pretty early and establish a connection with your main character as you bring the audience through the movie. This movie doesn't do that. It creates a backdrop first and then brings you into the characters. And I don't know. For some reason it really worked for me, and I liked feeling a little off kilter and didn't know what was happening until I was in it with these characters. And then once you're in the meat of what this movie is, it is absolutely harrowing. It is a harrowing experience, and one that I think can change the world. You know, I don't want to overstate it, but it's one of those things where movies have a unique position, and really narrative in general, storytelling, art has a unique power to put you in the shoes of other people. And this movie, I think, does that in such an effective way. The performances across the board are excellent. The filmmaking is excellent. It is truly a remarkable movie that I don't think is perfect. I think it could be shorter. I think after we leave that sort of tension-filled area, it loses a little of its pace, and it kind of stumbles, I think, a bit in trying to give us a wrap up and show where these people have gone with their lives. And I think a lot of it feels a little – I mean, there's such a release after this big scene in the center that it almost feels like, okay, I'm so spent. I don't have it in me to spend another 40 minutes of movie. And yet that's what's asked. And so I think it could have been trimmed and been a little leaner on its edges, but that's not to take away from what is an extraordinary film.
All right, Devendra Hardawar.
Yeah, so Catherine Bigelow and Mark Bowl gave us two of the best post 9/11 war movies ever, right? Like tremendous films. Zero Dark 30, that is a movie I still think about. That's a movie I revisit quite a bit. Like that movie is just astounding because of what it does. And how it's just kind of incredible to me that, you know, they come back and they make this movie, which is about the war at home, basically. Like this has all the trappings of the war films we've seen from them, but also a lot of the documentary side of it as well. It's a piece of journalism. It's a piece of, storytelling and quite a bit of activism, too. There's a lot, I loved about it. Like, I'm just kind of astounded that this thing exists like it is. It's not a movie that I think you can easily recommend to people. That's the thing. Like, it's so harrowing. It is just a very strange thing because you're put in a place where you're seeing police brutality pretty much up close.
It is law enforcement as a horror film. It is
pretty much.
It plays out like a horror movie, but the people coming to kill you are law enforcement officers, right?
Yeah.
And
I don't know if that's even. I think that's a misleading way to put it.
I disagree strongly. I mean, I think if you look at like a Saw movie, like this is very similar to a Saw movie. People trapped in a very small space. Someone tormenting them slowly, potentially.
I saw the trailer for Eli Roth's Death Wish right before this. And I was like, it is so weird.
Yeah.
Like that movie is entirely all like, it is pure like wish fulfillment, is pure like, taking the law into your own hands and going around killing people. And Eli Roth is known for his torture porn as well. That was just a weird juxtaposition to this film, which I think, people have called it a little torture porn-y because it is very gruesome, but I think it serves a purpose. I think it is telling us, like, it is really putting us in the shoes of these characters, and it's terrifying. So I think this is a very important film, just because it tells us, about something that most people don't quite know about. I knew about the Detroit riots. I didn't know about this specific situation, and it's horrific. And the way it's portrayed here is just excellently done, like great actors. And I think everything about the situation is told very well. So we're bringing a lot of comparisons to Dunkirk. I kind of felt that too. Dunkirk is a movie entirely about its experience, right? You're surviving that movie. And in so many ways, I felt like I had to survive this. And they're
both about situations where like people are trapped in a small space with like kind of the odds closing in against them, and they're doing everything they can to escape. And and a lot of it, or parts of it play out in seemingly real time. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
before we get too far away from the comment, I do think just calling it a horror film diminishes it.
Well,
to my
I'm
mind.
just saying sort of like one. I think that's what Dave is saying too. Like it's
well,
not.
Tell me why you think it diminishes it, Jeff.
I don't. I mean, I clearly the villain in this film is a monster. There's no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the movie treats him or them like horror monsters. I think there is more understanding and more insight into those people than you would find in your typical horror film.
But I think that's what makes it truly horrifying, Jeff. Like
I'm not saying it's not horrifying. I'm just saying to call it like a horror movie where Jason or Freddy is a cop. I feel like that.
See. I think you're reading like my calling it like a horror film as some kind of pejorative in some way. Like that just feels like somehow
semantics.
makes it like not a masterpiece or something. But that's not my intention.
Okay, fair enough.
I think it like the feel of it, the structure. At least the one scene you're talking about, it feels a lot like a horror film. Is what I'm trying.
It's a nail biting, really tense experience. Like I felt
for sure
all the same emotions I felt similar to Dunkirk, but also similar to Get Out and similar to a lot of horror films as well. The real horror of this movie is that nothing has changed. Like that's what it is. This movie is a wake up call in so many ways to a lot of people to, things people are still afraid of today. Even in a normal city or a normal suburban environment, like these are things that people of color are kind of afraid of all around the country. And it gets that perspective very well. So yeah, astounding on that level.
I have a bunch of thoughts. I think this movie is somewhat problematic, and I will get into how in the spoilers.
I love that phrase, somewhat problematic, by the way, because you could throw it at everything these days.
No, that's
but
true. That's true. I think it's problematic in specific ways, and I'll talk about that during the spoilers. But in the meantime, I will echo what you guys are saying. I had a epiphany is not the right word. I don't know. It was kind of an awe-inspiring moment when I was watching Zero Dark 30. Now, I did not like that movie as much as you, Devindra. I thought like most of it was not super interesting, but the last hour, which takes place almost entirely in real time, is one of the most tense pieces of filmmaking I've ever seen in my life. And it was of a story that I already knew the ending to. Like that everyone in the whole world knows the ending to. And when I watched it play out, I was in awe of how incredible this filmmaker, Catherine Bigelow, is. Like that she could take something that you already know pretty much exactly how it ends and make it into something that you're on the edge of your seat for. And I feel like, between that and The Hurt Locker, no filmmaker...
By the way, that's how I felt about United 93.
Yeah, another great example. Another great example. But between that and The Hurt Locker, I feel like very few filmmakers are better at generating tension than Catherine Bigelow. And I think you certainly see that here in Detroit. This is a movie that I was incredibly uncomfortable watching, that I was just filled with this dread the entire time I was watching it. And the central scene that you're talking about, I actually think is masterful filmmaking. It's painful to endure. And I think there's a very legitimate question of, given the pain, is it worth it? And this is a question that you asked when we watched It Comes at Night, Jeff. We had just gone through this horrifying experience watching It Comes at Night, and it's like, what's the message at the end of that? And we kind of, I threw out some messages for you, but it wasn't super satisfying. Like what the messages were for of that movie. And
I think the message is much more clear here.
Well, yeah, but I feel like, we can get more into detail about this in the spoilers, but ultimately I feel as though I don't know that this is a message that certainly that everyone needs to see. And what I mean by that is, let me just finish what I'm saying. I mean, what I mean by that is, for me, like, I keep up with the news every day. I see the stuff that happens in this movie happening, but like even worse than it was back then, because we actually have video evidence now.
Yeah.
Right. And it plays out in exactly the same way, right? Where people of color, unarmed people of color, they are attacked, they're harassed, and they are killed. And then, again, I'm getting into spoilers here. Like, I'd really rather just. I'm gonna edit this out. Like, let's just do this over again in the spoiler section, okay? Because this is, didn't want to get into spoilers, but, so let me try and take it back to where I can come into this. So, what was the thing I said right before you said something to me, Jeff?
I just said really because you said it was. You don't think it's something everyone needs to see,
right? Oh, okay. So okay, here. So it comes at night. That was the thing. It was like, was it possible? Like, what was the point of all that? Was it worth enduring? And I think I have questions about that. I think a lot of people have questions like, was it, the message that it's conveying? Could it have been conveyed in a different way? Was it worth putting the audience through all that to convey a message that a lot of people are already aware of, that you can see just by watching the news every night? I think that is a legitimate question about this movie. But I want to say more about that. Before we get into that, though, are there any other thoughts you guys have before we move into spoilers about this movie? Anything you want to mention, or shall we just get into the spoilers?
A couple of things. I mean, this movie is controversial on many levels, and I think we're going to talk about some of that in the spoilers. But I do remember when this project was announced, there was some pushback to Catherine Bigelow and Mark Ball telling the story, because this is a story that seems ripe for an African American filmmaker to take and do something with. And I think that pushback, I think, made a lot of sense, and it was good that we're in a place where we're talking about that as a culture now too. But I have to say, Catherine Bigelow and Mark Ball, these are two very seasoned artists in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it, and I think the movie shows that they did a very capable job of conveying the horror of this situation and really driving this message home. There are definitely things that probably could have been changed, and probably some issues with how they portrayed some of the violence, which we'll talk about in spoilers. But I have to say, at the end of the day, these are incredible. This is an incredible director and a great writer, and they've had a great partnership, and they've delivered some great films for us. So I'm glad they ended up well. I think a team this strong can tell a story like this for sure.
All right. Well, again, I have much more to say about this. So if we can move to spoilers. Happy to dive into it if you, Devindra. So let's talk about spoilers for Detroit starting right now. Devindra, you alluded to some of the controversy around this movie, and I've read a ton of articles about this. A lot of people
have thoughts, yes,
speaking out against this movie. I think it's a completely legitimate point of view to believe that that they should not have made this movie.
Sure,
I don't personally agree with that point of view. But I think what you're hearing, especially there's a lot of people minorities. I saw Angelica Jade wrote a piece for RogerEbert.com.
Mm-hmm.
Wesley Morris on his podcast has expressed that he's not a huge fan of the movie.
On Still Processing, yeah.
Right, on Still Processing, right. And, we should say that we have no real standing to talk about this. None of us on the podcast are African American, so I'm going to just start with that and say we're commenting kind of as people who don't have a stake in this fight necessarily. But I will just say that I think this recent election has made it so that conventional white allyship is no longer good enough. It's no longer good enough for just white people to be oh, hey, well, they're trying their best, and even if they didn't hit all the right notes, it's okay because they're trying their best. I think there's a lot of people of color who feel very burned by white people, a majority of which voted for Donald Trump. And I think that there is reason to ask, should white people be telling this story? Should white people be profiting off of telling a story of black pain? And I think whatever position you take, I would just encourage you to listen to what is out there, listen to people's pain that they are expressing in raw form about why they don't think this movie should have been made or shouldn't have been made in the way it is. Now, that being said, I happen to think I happen to be on Devindra's I happen to agree with Devindra on this one that I think it's better that this movie exists than it not existing. This movie is made for white people. The poster of the movie says, "It's time we knew." Who is we in that equation, right? Because I'm pretty sure black people know about police brutality. I'm pretty sure
this movie isn't telling them much new.
That's what I'm saying. Is like if you are a person of color that is harassed and your people slaughtered repeatedly, unpunished by law enforcement officers
on video,
right?
unpunished.
Then I don't know that Detroit is really going to add to your understanding of the world. And is it worth enduring an experience as horrible and as taxing as Detroit to gain not that much more understanding? I don't know if it is. But Jeff Kanata, to your point, if more white people saw Detroit, if more white people were clued in to some of the things that black people go through in their interactions with law enforcement, would the world be better? I think so. And I understand if people out there disagree with that position, but I think, white people watching this movie is ultimately a good thing for the world. I would also say that we have. I think the argument comes down to should this movie have been made by Catherine Bigelow or should it have been made by someone else? If someone else made it, if a black person made it, it would be a different movie. Firstly, it might not even exist at all because unfortunately, it's a fact that people of color aren't getting projects made to the extent they should be getting them made. Right? That number should be higher. But even if it was made, maybe it would be different. Not maybe. It would certainly be different. It might not have the same strengths as this movie. It might have different strengths. So I think there's really some value in taking this movie as it is. And I think filmmakers are put in a challenging situation. I'm not saying poor filmmakers, their lives are so difficult, but I think there is a challenge in terms of, what should they take away as the criticism of that is when I read the criticism, it feels like, hey, just stay in your own lane. Don't tell stories about black pain. Don't tell stories about black people. Those should be the provenance of black people. In which case, they make movies only about white people, and then they get slammed for that as well, right? If you guys saw Sophia Coppola,
it's like a slippery slope of basically making people only do things that they know about, right?
Right,
and,
only tell stories that from life experiences that you know. Now, I hope I am not setting up straw men here. I hope I'm accurately characterizing people's viewpoints. But when I read reviews like Angelica Jade's, if I was Catherine Bigelow reading that review, I would not think, oh, she's cool with me telling other black stories as long as I do it better. I would think that there is kind of this hostility to people like Catherine Bigelow making these kinds of movies. And I think it's fine that they have that hostility. I think that's a valid point of view. But the counterfactual is that Catherine Bigelow didn't make this movie. And I think the world would actually, the world of cinema would be worse off.
Yeah, so, I see what you're saying. We've talked about, we are in a strange transition period now as a culture. And I think what we're seeing, too, we talk about this around The Big Sick and, a lot of films. We bring up this stuff all the time on the show. And I think this pushback is good. It's important. Now people are actually listening to communities that never really had a say before in media that represented them. So all that is important. I'm never going to tell anybody who feels like they have no, reason to go see this movie because they feel it maybe hits too close to home or they may not think it would give them anything new. If that's their perspective, then that's completely fine. I think that makes total sense. But I do sort of see some of the bigger problems in society today as just a failure of empathy, right? And we've talked about this before. And this movie is like a freaking empathy nuclear bomb. This movie really conveys, the horror of a situation like this and extreme police brutality. So yeah, I agree with you, Dave. I do think it is a good thing, especially if somebody feels completely removed from these problems. It would hopefully help somebody kind of fix their heart a little, as it were, taking the Twin Peaks saying. But I think something like this is ultimately good. Yeah.
I think there are, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say, both of you, I am in awe of how well you have both articulated what you have said here, and I just think I agree 100% with everything you both have said, and I'm just very impressed with how well you've been able to express the conflict of this. And I will say, as speaking for white America, as I often have to on this podcast, as Devindra said, as we've all said previously on previous episodes, we are in an odd time because, as a sensitive white person, capital SWP, whatever, it's a tough thing to hear. How dare you not be on our side? Okay, I'm on your side. I don't need you to be on my side. That kind of rage. It really comes from rage of and very justifiable rage. And it's the kind of thing of, why don't we get movies made like this? Okay, I'll make a movie like this. How dare you make a movie like this? Only we should be able to make movies like this. Well, what am I supposed to do? That's the kind of feeling, and I'm not articulating this nearly as well as either of you have, but
I think you're right. I think you're right. We're in a growing pains period where 50 years from now, hopefully, there's people of all colors making movies. There's black people, there's women, there's Asians, there's Native Americans. Everyone's directing movies. Everyone's acting in movies. The entire United States population has turned, light brown. There's, it's mixed race everything, and we don't have these conversations anymore. And because it's like, you can tell, like, everyone can tell each other stories, everyone has equal access to Hollywood, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not there right now. We're in this weird time period where 90% of the movies in Hollywood are directed by men, and significant portion of them are directed by white men. And so there's this kind of, like, as we transition from one place to the other, it's almost like directors are being asked to walk a very, very difficult line. It's like, you must include diversity in your movie, but not too much diversity, or else you're, like, appropriating the culture. But don't include nothing, or else it's just all white people and you're perpetuating this horrible system. And I'm not saying... Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
The underlying feeling there that's being expressed is one of frustration and rage, and it is justifiable. It is one that is bubbled up from years of feeling unrepresented and misrepresented, and those are things that I am sensitive to. Those are things that I think all of us believe are real and want to pay attention to and want to understand and want to see rectified over time. And I've been in situations on Twitter where I speak out on things and I am criticized for, how dare you try to understand what I'm feeling? And it's like, I'm on your side on this one. I want to be on your side. I'm trying to understand. And it's all a learning process. And I think ultimately where we have to live, and then you get accused of mansplaining and all these things where it's like, no, I'm not trying to mansplain. I'm just trying to be on your side. But ultimately where we get, I think, is, at least in this case, you kind of just have to, or I would like to, discuss the piece of art as it is, right? Because I think we all look at this piece of art and say, it's really worthwhile. It's really worthwhile. And I love that. I love that description of it as a nuclear bomb of empathy, because
I would question whether it's worthwhile. Like, I think there's exceptional filmmaking in this movie, but when I watched it, I thought to myself, like, did I really need to endure that? Because it's not as though I think that police brutality isn't the problem. Like, I've seen the videos. It's horrifying to me. But
it's not. This movie, I would argue this movie is not about police brutality. It's about power.
Sure. Whatever you want to call it. Like,
the root cause,
the stuff that's going on. You think it's kind of more like a Stanford prison experiment kind of thing, right?
And I think it does a really, and that's kind of why I was pushing back against the whole horror movie thing, and maybe I misunderstood what you were meaning, but I really feel like this movie shows insight into how these cops get seduced into this position of power, because ultimately this guy kind of thinks he's doing the right thing. Like, he thinks that you need to, and we really see in this movie people destroying their own neighborhoods, right? And it comes from rage and it comes from all these things you understand, but the expression of it is a very destructive one that you can't have in society, right?
That's also how it all, like, yeah, that comes up a lot too. Like when you're talking about do the right thing, like why are you destroying your own neighborhood when you're trying to fight against the system? That there's a lot of stuff you can read about that and why that happens, and especially in communities where they have no power, the one thing you can take control of is like what's around you, like taking control of your world in a way that may be destructive, but that's just the thing that lets somebody who has no power feel like they can do something. But I'm glad you brought up the idea, Jeff, that this cop, the lead cop, who does most of the torturing, the way we're introduced to him, that is just a fascinating scene, isn't it? Because he's talking about it. He sounds like McNulty in The Wire or something, right? He sounds like, oh, I'm a good guy. We're failing these people. We're failing them. We need to do better. Dude runs out, chases after a guy with groceries with a shotgun and shoots him in the back. Like all that is one scene. Right. And I think that's when I knew this movie was onto something. Like that's the sort of thing I really love from Catherine Bigelow, because she really uses action to tell you something about these characters and what's happening, right? This is a guy who thinks he's trying to help, and he's helping by stopping a guy who wants food and shooting him in the back several times, like hunting him down. Right. And that thought process. So like, I see what you're saying, Jeff. Like this is a movie that's ultimately about power, but it really is about how power informs something like police brutality, because that's what it is.
And like, please, like I'll be, you know, I know you're not saying this, Jeff, but I really also think the movie is about racism.
Yes,
of course.
So, you know, and how power and racism mix together to form this very unfortunate mix.
Undoubtedly.
But I will say that Will Poulter, this is like a breakout performance for that guy. Will Poulter, who's in The Revenant and We're the Millers and The Maze Runner, he plays the evil cop in this movie. And I thought he's just absolutely chilling in this movie.
So good.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, so good. But I also think that some of the most horrific moments of the movie are when you see these other law enforcement officers who know what is right and wrong and just go, I don't want to get involved. You know, that when that guy's like, oh, but these people have civil rights. And he's like, yeah. And you see him think about it and he's like, all right, let's just go. I don't want to get involved.
It's the freaking National Guard, I think, right? And like they roll up like, this is wrong. Everybody, this shouldn't be happening. Let's go. Let's just,
and those moments to me were even more chilling and more heartbreaking, because it's the inaction, the complicitness of just allowing it to go on that hit me really hard.
It's people who think they're good who do nothing. Like that's really what it comes down to. Even like the boss of these cops, like the homicide detectives, that's really giving him shit. Like, why did you shoot somebody in the back for running away with groceries? Like he's giving him shit. It's like, okay, I'm going to suspend you, but he could have pulled the kid off the street that moment. It's like, give me your Badger gun right now. Like, what are you doing? But no,
I'm going to recommend murder charges. But you'll have a great rest of your day.
Exactly.
You go back out on the street.
Yeah. So I love that the movie had those situations too. It is people basically failing to do anything to stop the horror of the overall system, and that's an incredible thing to see in a film like this.
Well, I think here's one thing that I think makes the movie a bit challenging is it would be one thing if Catherine Bigelow made a flawless movie and people were still saying that that she shouldn't be telling this story. You know, like that would be a different argument than I think the argument that's being had today, which is that there are some really significant issues with this movie, and I think one of them is the character of Dismukes, who's played by John Boyega. There is a really interesting concept behind that character. I mean, firstly, I should point out that I believe there is controversy about the real life Dismukes and whether he was actually involved in perpetrating some of the crimes in that in the hotel. But there's something really interesting about this person who, like, the black people don't treat him well because they see him as like a traitor of sorts. White people don't treat him well because they see him as lower to some degree. And so he's kind of trapped between these two worlds where he's trying to be deferential but also trying to be helpful. And that's a very interesting dynamic that the movie, in my opinion, doesn't do anything with. I don't think it goes anywhere.
He has an arc though, which I found to be interesting. Like he disappears for entire swaths of this movie. Like his character just pops up. Like he is employed to be security guard, in a grocery store, and then shit starts going down way somewhere else. And he's like, I'm gonna go check that out.
Well, why does he even show up? Like that,
exactly.
That was a little confusing, and so
it's very confusing.
So I felt as though the character, he does have an arc. Seeing him at the trial, like that is interesting, and how he reacts to that. But
I do think he starts out as somebody who thinks like, I'm gonna do what I can to lift myself up out of the situation. Like he was doing everything he could to like appease the cops and like appease the white people basically, so other people wouldn't get hurt. But in a way too, it also seemed like he was complicit in the system at the beginning, right? He told one of the guys is like, if you guys weren't making trouble, these cops wouldn't be here. Like he basically believed the cops' version of the events to even be in the hotel in the first place. And slowly he starts to see what's happening. And the ultimate injustice is that amazing scene where they call him in the interrogation room, and like the tables have turned, and he is, he's just a guy in overalls. He's just a blue collar worker. He's not a guy with a uniform and a gun. And those cops, which aren't even like the terrible, police brutality cops, those are just shitty cops yelling at him and trying to basically make him confess to something that he didn't do. That whole scene, like the horror of the situation where he basically loses control and he realizes, oh man, like this, they're not treating me well and I can't do anything about this. And like that growth, I guess, at least for the character on screen, I don't know how it kind of ended up for him in real life. That's something.
Fair enough. You're right. Devendra. It's not nothing, but I think it taps only a small fraction of the percentage of what a character like that would go through. So, but very, very good point on that. The other thing that I think is just really weird in this movie is there is a bunch of kind of anachronistic, almost like audience wish fulfillment moments in the movie. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, towards the end of the movie, one of the characters, the singer, right, he runs out and he runs to this fence, and then like a cop finds him. And like nurses him back down. He's like, "Oh my gosh, what kind of monster did this thing? I never." And it's just, it's
I think his exact line is, "Who would do this to a person?"
Right. It is very, very disconcerting. I mean,
and then he also said, "I'm going to help you, brother."
Right.
Like,
right.
And take you to the cop. Like,
it's just,
there's a lot of Blue Lives Matter.
It's the movie's very ham-fisted way of showing that like not all policemen are horrible. Which I understand the desire to do that, but just like the way it was executed in this movie felt very, very odd and not. It did not feel like it fit in with the rest of the movie.
It wasn't very subtle at all, but I guess I sort of give that really hokey thing a pass because the movie did so many other subtle things where the rest of the cops just kind of let all this happen. Like, on so many levels, this could have been stopped.
That was a very. I do agree with you that element, like the Milgram experiment-esque thing of like people just letting this awful stuff transpire, that was very chilling. I agree that was like a very well done part of the movie.
Or the dude that doesn't understand that he's not supposed to actually shoot the guy.
Which is like, plays out like a almost comedic moment in the movie, which kind of was uncomfortable, and I'm still not sure how I feel about that moment. Like,
I don't know.
I don't know. And in any case,
it didn't feel comedic. It definitely felt like. It felt more like an oh shit moment, but nobody in my audience laughed when that happened.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree with you on that part. I agree with you about
I will say anecdotally, I went to see this at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, and my audience, I was surprised how full it was, first of all. And second of all, it was almost split right down the middle between white and black audience. And there was a lot of cheering at the end of the movie from my audience. And I don't know, just anecdotally, I thought that was interesting.
When what happens?
When the credits came on. there was
just cheering about the movie being
just
great.
Applauding the film. Yeah.
I see. Well, on that note, another anachronism is when the cop comes in, like Will Poulter tries to leave, and the cop leans over the window and is like, something, you racist fuck. And it's like, I don't really believe that would actually happen in that way. I don't think there's someone saying like racist fuck to this guy. And
I mean, I could see a lot of things happening.
I would like to see that. I would like that but again, it felt like audience wish fulfillment as opposed to an actual representation of the truth.
Well, he says that when he was the dude that could have pulled him off the street at the beginning.
No, that was a different guy. Different guy questioning him at the end. But I did want to give a shout out to this thing that really kind of affected my perception of this whole issue. And there's been many stories about this in the press this past year. But Radiolab had a 2-part series called Shots Fired. Devinger, you listen to this by any chance?
Yeah.
Shots Fired Part 1 and 2. It's a collaboration with a reporter from the Tampa Bay Times who also did a written story about this. And one thing that was in that podcast series that really stuck with me was at the end talking about... So they interview all these parents whose children have been killed by police officers. Like, often the children are unarmed, and they're killed by police officers. And, like, that's a horrifying thing for any parent to endure. And talking about how almost every single instance in which this happens, pretty much every single one, the cop goes free. Like, nothing happens to the cop.
Oh, right? Yes. Yeah.
And how that is a separate form of violence. Like the initial murder or, you know, killing of the child is awful and horrendous, but then knowing that the cop is out there, potentially still being a cop, potentially still with a gun patrolling the streets, like that is a separate form of violence. And that's one thing I think the movie did a good job of illustrating is how galling and infuriating a trial like this must have been, is that all these horrible atrocities occur, and the system is constructed in such a way to let them go free, and how like that, it's almost like reliving the nightmare all over again in a way. Like it is a separate nightmare that the cops are going free. And Washington Post just did a piece on this. Did you guys see this? 4 days ago, they published a thing about how. Let me see. This is the headline of the article is. Oh shit! Sorry, guys, I lost it. I had it up. Hold on for a second.
I saw this, by the way. Yeah.
Hold on. Oh yeah. Okay. The headline of this article is "Fired/Rehired. Police chiefs are often forced to put officers fired for misconduct back on the streets." And it has this. Like really incredible graphic at the top where it says, since 2006, at least 1,881 police officers have been fired from 37 of the nation's largest departments for behavior that betrayed the public's trust. And it goes over some of the horrible things they've done. 451 of those 1,800 or so successfully appealed and won their jobs back. So it's like huge percentage of cops back in their old jobs. And this is just a few days ago. So the events of the movie definitely still have resonance today. And if it's not something that you're aware of, or it's not something that you've been following, I think it will have value. But if it is something you follow, then I question the value a little bit more.
Sure.
I appreciate you guys letting me go on about this for length because I've been thinking a lot about it. But
I think it's important, and I mean, that's what I think is so valuable about this movie for any perceived faults, and I think it's wonderful that it engenders conversation, and I don't understand anybody that wouldn't be possessed by this movie for days and weeks after. It has certainly it placed itself in my mind, and I'm moved by it every day. I think about it. It's a powerful work, so I think it has value.
All right, guys. Well, that's our review of Detroit. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned to hear what we'll be reviewing next week. In the meantime, Jeff Kanata, where can I find more of your work on the internet this week?
Oh, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Kanata, which is spelled with 2 N's and 1 T. And I have several other shows for you to listen to, especially if you like video games. I do a daily video game show called Newest, Latest, Best that you can find on iTunes. You can find it on Google Play. Just search for Newest, Latest, Best, or visit anchor.fm/NLB. I have a weekly video game show as well called DLC. It's a long-form show with guests. You can find that at 5by5.tv/DLC. And I have a short-form comedy show about science. That's called We Have Concerns, and you can find that at wehaveconcerns.com.
How about you, Devendra Hardor?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at @Devendra, and I write about tech at Engadget.com.
Find all my stuff at davechen.net. I'm on Twitter at DaveChensky. And I'm hosting a podcast about Game of Thrones at GameOfThronespodcast.com. Next week, we're going to be reviewing The Glass Castle, the newest film by director Dustin Cretton, I think, right? This is a guy who did Short Term 12. Really excited for this movie. But I should mention that I probably am not going to be here. I'm probably going to be taking a break next week, probably for the next couple weeks, actually. So next week's episode of The Glass Castle will be without me. And I think in 2 weeks we're probably taking a week off, and I hope to be back by the end of the summer, but we'll see. I've been podcasting myself into the ground recently, guys, and need a little bit of a break. But in any case, you can find more episodes of our podcast at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next week. All right.
Cool. Good show.
Yeah, really good.